Welcome to the chat. I'm Catherine Glaspie, Public Information Director for Chatham County, and the chat is where we talk about all things Chatham. And today we have a great program coming up for you. To introduce everybody that you see on the screen, I've got Abby Murphy, my faithful co-host, and Robert Catanese, who you probably have never seen before, at least not in this capacity, but he is our video producer here at Chatham County and will be joining us for our podcast from now on. And our guest today is Chelsea Sawyer. She is the Community Outreach Coordinator, Volunteer Coordinator. She's got a title I can't ever remember, or it's like 30 words long, Chelsea. So tell me your title.
Community Outreach and Volunteer Coordinator, but it changes on the regular, so it's okay.
So we just consider Chelsea a part of our team here in the PIO office. We work with her a lot, and we've been working with her on National Preparedness Month, and that is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to kick it over to Abby and let her get started on this podcast today.
Welcome back, Chelsea, to the chat. So why don't you tell us what National Prepared Month is?
Sure. So National Preparedness Month is a nationwide project that has been going on for years, where we're really trying to focus the entire month of September on being prepared for any type of disaster within your community. Now here in Chatham County, we kind of take it as an opportunity to really focus on hurricane season again, because September, specifically September 10th, is peak hurricane season, and especially along the Atlantic. It's really important for us to take this as an opportunity to prepare for all types of disasters, but focus on that hurricane season.
I didn't realize September 10th was the peak hurricane season. I knew it was around end of August, September-ish area, so that's good to know.
Yes, well, and you know, it's kind of weird that they can pin it down to a particular day. But that means that we're on the downward slide, and I'm ready for it because 2020 has been, well, 2020.
And I think it's interesting to point out that we were at peak, so that would have been last Thursday, because we're recording this on a Tuesday. So that would have been last Thursday. And just in the last 4 days, we have 5 named storms in the Atlantic, because we're already up to V. So we have one more to go in the pre-chosen alphabet, and then we flip over to Greek letters. And, you know, I mean, if we're at peak of the season and we have another 2 months to go, it's very likely that we will move into those Greek letters. Don't you think?
Absolutely. And, you know, the last time that happened, I believe, was 2005. That didn't happen until October 22nd of that year. So right. For us to reach this point this early in the season, it's not looking super awesome. But hopefully they will just continue to name fish storms and they'll stay out and won't bother us.
That's the plan. I've said no more this year. We're done. We're done. All right. I'm sorry. I interrupted. Go ahead, Robert. I know you have burning
That's all right.
questions.
That's okay. Chelsea, you know, when we talk about National Preparedness Month, there's a couple of themes that I think that you want to kind of hammer home. What are they?
Sure. So there's a theme for each week. And the first one is make a plan. So that first week of September, we were really pushing and continue to push this idea of making a plan or updating your plan. So your plan is going to be different for each family, for each type of really structure or home that you live in. So we can talk a little bit more in detail about making a plan, but that's theme 1. Theme 2 is build a kit. So there's different types of emergency kits that you can create, and we were really highlighting those types of kits last week. This week is prepare for disasters. Now, again, because this is a nationwide campaign, their themes are very broad. So the way that we're choosing in Chatham County for prepare for disasters is really focusing on your insurance and making sure that you have enough insurance, making sure that you have flood insurance and all types of insurance coverage. And then next week, in the last week of September, is teach youth about preparedness. And I'm really excited. This year, we have put together, with the help of the wonderful Abby, put together a coloring contest for children 13 and under. which will start tomorrow.
Awesome. Awesome. I did see that, Ab. That was a phenomenal piece that you put together. It looks really good. And I know it's going to be pretty impactful to, to a lot of children who, want to learn more about this.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that that it'll make kids think more about what they should pack in an emergency kit, think about little comforts from home that they may want to bring, and also make it fun to have that coloring contest. And so I wanted to ask, what should Chatham County residents consider putting in their emergency plan?
So as I started mentioning earlier, your plan really needs to be specific to your family. So you don't want to, you could, at least as a starting place, go online and find a generic plan, but you really want to make it more specific to your family. So if you've got an infant in your family, or if you have older children versus younger children, the types of things that you're going to want to include are going to change pretty drastically. And as your children grow or age or move out of the home, your plan's going to need to grow and adapt with them as well. So also, if you have elderly individuals living with you, not often do we just have mom, dad, children, and families anymore. A lot of times you've got uncles or brothers or grandparents that are staying in these homes. So making sure that the plan is accurate and ready to go for everyone is really important. Also, thinking about items in your plan, when you're going to evacuate, if we're focusing specifically on hurricane, we're going to evacuate. What types of things do you need to include in your evacuation planning? So are there, family heirlooms that you're going to want to take with you? Or are there things that you're going to want to pack up within your home that if you were to receive floodwaters, or if you were to have wind damage your roof, are there things that you're going to want to make sure that you have with you, or things that you're going to want to make sure that are protected in some capacity? Those are things to write into your plan. And, we're talking about hurricanes here in Chatham County, but across the country, people are talking about, tornado plans. What are they going to do if there's a tornado warning? Are they going to, hide in their bathroom? Are they going to hide, downstairs in the basement? Do they have a basement? These are just all different types of things. Take each disaster as its own separate kind of annex or tab or portion of your plan, and start building those things out. You just have conversations on a weekly basis with your family and say, hey, what would we do if there was a tornado? Or hey, what would we do if we had to evacuate for a hurricane? It will eventually start to make itself into a really nice plan.
And Chelsea, I think you've mentioned something that I think is very important here, and that is while we're preparing for the thing that seems to affect us the most and the deepest, which is a hurricane, we have had quite a number of tornadoes in the last 4 years. I think there's 5 now that we've worked, 2 of them attached to hurricanes or other events, but then we've had like 3 tornadoes, maybe even 4. I think there were 3 out on Wilmington Island and 1 in Garden City. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm thinking about it, that, people didn't sustain huge amounts of damage, but they did have damage from them, and some of those people had to leave their homes. So these kits are very important, and having that plan is important just for that reason. We've also had a lot of flooding over the last couple of years. So that those are all things that they should prepare for. Are there other things that people should prepare for besides the disasters that we've just talked about?
I think that those are some big ones. Another one though, fire drills. Like if you start doing fire drills within your home, starting about age 2 and up, your child's going to be able to comprehend this idea, especially if they're in school. I know my 9-month-old is doing fire drills in her daycare. So she's starting to get accustomed to, the alarm going off and then, filing in a line and trying to get out of the school. So talk about this. Kids are going to be a lot more receptive and understanding if the fire alarm is going off at 2 in the morning and you need to leave if you have practiced this before. So Catherine, you're right. Tornadoes, flooding, hurricanes, fire drills, all of those types of things are important to practice with children, but also practicing just with your spouse or just with your parents. If you've got elderly parents staying with you, getting people accustomed to doing it so that they know what to do in an emergency situation. Our tornadoes don't last longer than about 5 to 10 minutes here in Chatham County. The types of storms and tornadoes that we have, you don't have a whole lot of time to make these decisions. So practicing it, understanding what to do, it's going to make a huge difference.
You know, Chelsea, when you talk about hurricane season, I think with all of us having to deal with hurricanes at some point in our careers or other, the worst thing you want to hear is you need to get your emergency kit ready. And there's two different types, or a couple different types, that people really need to kind of consider, right?
Yeah, so there's, we here at SEMA really try to focus on two types of kits. You're right, there are a bunch of different types of kits that you can prep. But because of COVID, it's really gotten people thinking about what they can do and how they can do it. So we're really trying to push these two. The first is your stay-at-home kit. That needs to have food and water and supplies that you would need if the electricity were to go out. If we were to shelter in place for a hurricane here, let's think of like Tropical Storm Hermine that came through. You could be without power. You could be without, a way to go out and get food. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got all the items that you need in a specific location within your home. I suggest not in the pantry. One of the reasons I say don't put your food in the pantry, if it's meant for an emergency and you've got some awesome chocolate chips that you love, if you see those and you're, 10 p.m., you're hankering for a snack, you're going to go for those hurricane snacks because they're there and you want them. So, in my family, they stay upstairs in my husband's office. I don't go in there because it's always a mess in there. But we've got it in a kit and it's ready to go. And I'm not going to go up and mess with it unless it's about to expire. So that's a perfect option. But you want to make sure, again, non-perishable food, supplies, flashlights, batteries, work gloves, the same types of things that you would put in a standard emergency kit. We do have a list on our website. But you want to make sure that you've got about 2 weeks of supplies. Sounds like a lot. But if we were in a bad situation and we were stuck here, you would want to make sure that you've got enough food and water to take care of your family. So that's one of the kits. The second one that we really push is your evacuation kit. Now this one is meant to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So about 3 to 5 days worth of supplies. In this kit, you're going to want to include, your non-perishable foods, your water, your general hygiene supplies, your cloth-based coverings for COVID. But you're also going to want to include things like clothing and shoes because it's meant to be you are running out the door because you were told that you need to leave at a moment's notice. So those are kind of your two differences. A lot of your contents are going to be about the same, but the amount and how quickly you're going to be able to move it is going to be important.
A lot to think about.
And I know you mentioned earlier how you need to consider how things may change. And I know for me, what I need to have in my kit is different now that my daughter's older, because when she was an infant, I wanted to make sure I had lots of formula. But now she eats the same food that we do. So I know I need to increase the amount of types of food that I have and make sure it's stuff that she would eat. So that I think that was a good thing that you brought up, that you need to consider how things may change throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And my child is breastfed, so we have to think about immediately going to get dry ice. If our freezer is about to go out, we need to make sure that we've got the opportunity to kind of take all of her milk and put it in a place that's easy to go. And that's a whole nother level of complexity. And that goes back to that family plan. What are the details that you need to think about for your specific family? If you have a family member that's on insulin that needs to be refrigerated, that's going to be a totally different situation than having, a family member that's not on some of those things. Every plan is going to be different.
Yep, I can attest to that one because I do insulin, so and have for many years, and that's something that not only do you have to prepare for it having to be cold, but you have to prepare for having enough of it, because if we get hit by a large storm and it takes days or weeks to get us back into the county, much less start recovery process of getting businesses open like pharmacies and getting deliveries to those pharmacies, I may not be able to get insulin for 30 to 60 days. So that's something that you have to think about too. So I always try to keep a very good supply of all my medicines, and never let them get down to, oh my gosh, I have 3 days worth of medicine. Because if you have to evacuate, now if you use a larger pharmacy, one of the box stores, you can probably go to another city, another county, and get those medicines because it's all tied into their database. But if you use a local pharmacy, you may not have that same ability. So you need to make sure that you have enough medicine to at least get you through for a little bit of time if you have to evacuate, or even if we stay and then we have a long time of recovery. I think that's one of the things that when I talk to people about storms, which I don't do very often because Chelsea does it, but occasionally I do. That's one of the things that I like to hammer home, is because people don't think about that. They think, oh, well, I'm going to go for a couple days and then I'm going to come back and everything's going to return to normal. And we've been very fortunate that that has happened to us in the last 4 years, almost 5 years. But it's not always going to be the case.
Well, and you have to think what's going on with Hurricane Laura right now. I mean, some of these places are just now getting power, and that storm hit weeks ago. Right. So if we were to see damages like what they saw there, we could expect to see some of the same challenges. So that's a fantastic point. And, you know, if you talk to your healthcare provider, talk to your doctor and ask them, can I get an additional amount of this prescription so that I can have extra on hand? Most likely they're going to say yes, especially during hurricane season.
Right. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, what is one thing residents can easily do today or this weekend to prepare for disasters in Chatham County? Because people may be listening to this and being like, I really want to do something now. Because I know for me, I have anxiety. So if I feel like if I take matters into my own hands and I try to do something today, it makes me feel a little bit better. I'm sure there's some people out there feeling that way as well. So what's something that residents can do today?
Sure. So 2 things I'll say that residents can do right off the bat. One, if you haven't already, start building that emergency kit. Each time you go to the grocery store, I use the little Walmart app or the Kroger click list. Just add a few extra things into your cart. If you add a few things each time you go to the store, it's not going to be as burdensome. Or just go ahead and look through your cabinet now and say, well, what are some of these things that I can go ahead and put in my emergency kit just to be safe? So that's one. The second thing, you guys have got to look at your insurance policies. If you need flood insurance, every place in Chatham County is prone to storm surge. Now, storm surge is different than just regular flooding that we might see. Flooding comes from rainwaters that come down, whereas storm surge is tides that literally come up because of a storm. So that water is going to be pushing farther and farther inland. If we have a large enough storm, even places in Pooler, Port Wentworth, Garden City, they are very likely to see some storm surge that's just coming out from the ocean. So everybody in Chatham County should really look at a flood insurance policy. I highly recommend it. If you are even a renter, that's something that you can do, and it could be less than $100 a year for you to have flood insurance to cover the contents of your home. But just make sure that you have enough insurance to cover the damages that might happen. Make sure that you understand your policy itself. You know, I did a talk with Commissioner King with the Georgia Office of Insurance Commission, and he really just stressed that people are often incredibly underinsured, or they just don't understand what their policy says. So after Hurricane Matthew, I saw that firsthand. I had someone call our office and they were told that they have a $25,000 deductible. So they have to pay $25,000 out of their pocket before their insurance company will pay a dime. And that's because they have a named storm clause in their policy, which means that if they name a storm, so you think Catherine mentioned it earlier, how we have all these different names for our storms these days. You know, if Hurricane Wilford were to come here, that's a named storm, and that means that a whole different cycle goes in with your policy. And that means that you may have to pay 10% of your home's value. You may have to pay 10% of the damages that it caused. Really just take a look at what your policy says. If you don't understand it, call your insurance agent. If your insurance agent isn't willing to talk to you about it, you might want to consider finding a different insurance company, because it's really important for you to understand what they're asking you to do and what's going to be required of you. Because if you've got a $25,000 deductible, if you don't have $25,000 sitting in an account to pay for that, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. So those are some things that you can easily do this weekend, this week, whenever. But I suggest that you really go ahead and think about those things now.
You know, Chelsea, for families that are out there, folks with children and young ones, how important is it to teach them about being prepared, and what should parents do to educate their little ones?
Yeah, I think that it's incredibly important for children to be engaged in disaster planning. Now, depending on the age of your child, it's going to depend on how in-depth you really get. If you have a child that hasn't started kindergarten yet, someone younger than the age of 5, they're often fascinated with these large trucks. So they'll see fire trucks and ambulances and police cars, and they'll be fascinated by the lights and the sirens. Start that as a conversation. Say, oh, did you see the fire truck? Do you know what fire trucks do? Do you know that they put out fires? Start having a conversation that's just very broad about this idea of disasters and emergencies, and who they could talk to or who they could see if they were ever in trouble. It's a fantastic segue into talking about some of those disasters and emergencies. And kindergarten through 3rd grade, that's really an awesome age where they're starting to learn about weather, they're starting to learn about emergencies in school, and they're often very excited about it. I've taught many kindergarten through 3rd grade classes, just some emergency preparedness things. They, and especially our kids these days, they understand the word evacuation and they understand the word hurricane and what that means. Start to engage them, start to get them excited. Talk to them about, the different types of weather and what does it mean when it rains, and what if it rains really hard? Could flooding happen? And start bringing up these words, because it's reinforcing what they're learning in school, and also making them realize that you're kind of smart as a parent. Like, Mom's got it going on. She knows what I'm learning in school. It helps engage that process just a little bit more. And then 3rd through 5th grade, and really beyond that, they need to be engaged in your disaster preparedness planning. So start doing those fire drills, start doing those hurricane evacuation planning meetings. If you do a weekly or a monthly family meeting, incorporate that into it. Say, what would we do if there were a tornado right now and we needed to get to a safe place? Where would we go inside of our home? They're learning it in school, and they know that they need to go underneath their desk, or they need to go to an area that doesn't have any windows. Talk about what they need to do at home. What do they do if they're at a store? What do they do if they are out in a park and they need to find a place that's safe? Start having those conversations with them. They're really excited about it for the most part. They want to learn, they want to understand. Just add that extra oomph to your conversation, and I almost guarantee they're going to be pretty receptive of it.
Awesome.
I definitely learned something, because my daughter she's almost 2.5, and I didn't even think about pointing out fire trucks and saying exactly what the point of a fire truck is. They put out the fires, but she has started noticing storms and thunder and all of that. She's really been commenting every time. So I've been teaching her, it's okay, you just stay inside and you're safe in the house. We just don't go outside. So that's definitely something that I just learned right now that I didn't even think about, that I could start teaching Violet now, so young, about preparedness and safety when it comes to weather and disasters.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really, once they're talking and they're starting to understand words that you're saying and they're engaging in the world around them, it's the perfect time to start having those conversations. It will help their vocabulary and also help them understand this crazy world that we live in.
Awesome. Well, our time is winding down today, so we're going to go for final thoughts. Abby, final thoughts?
Well, I'm just excited to see the submissions, or what submissions will be made for this coloring contest. I'm
Yeah.
super excited about this. And that's going to be posted on SEMA's Facebook page, correct?
Yeah, so my goal is to post it on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and then also posting it to our website so that kids can go in, or I guess their parents can go in and download the coloring sheet and they can submit it. And I will say we've got some pretty awesome prizes. The top participant, or the winner for each of the age categories, is going to win their very own emergency kit that's got supplies in it that they would need to help during any type of emergency here in Chatham County. I'm really excited to get those mailed off to these kids and let them learn just a little bit more about emergency preparedness.
That's really awesome. Robert, final thoughts?
And I think that, for folks who are going to see this and still may have some questions, Chelsea, how can they stay in the know and how can they get the information, whether it be about their insurance papers or whether it be about their emergency kits? Where can they stay in the know?
So I think the first step is going to be our website. So they can always go to chathamemergency.org, and that's going to kind of be like a starting place. So they might from there be able to go to ready.gov, or they might find floodsmart.gov and learn more about flood insurance. Or, maybe they're trying to find a place to evacuate with their pets. We've got resources for there with petswelcome.com. So all kinds of information and resources are available on our website. That's going to really be a fantastic starting place for them.
Great.
All right.
Awesome.
Chelsea, anything that we have left out that you want to add? Any final thoughts?
I think, as always, you guys have done an awesome job, and I think we've covered really everything that I was hoping to get out there about National Preparedness Month.
Well, in actuality, you're the awesome one because you're always easy to talk to because you know your stuff. And that's why we love having you on this show. We don't have to pull teeth. You always have plenty of information to tell us. My final thought of the day is just make sure that our residents, speaking to you, get prepared. Make sure that you have those plans in place and make sure that you have a communications plan too. So if you get separated or you have loved ones here, that you all have a central place to call to report that you're okay. We did that last time in my family because I had family going in different directions and I was staying here. And we used my grandmother as that central place. So everybody could call my grandmother and tell her where they were and that they were safe. And any one of us could call and say, hey, have you heard from my mom? Have you heard from my mother-in-law? Have you heard from my husband? And they had all called her. So that's a nice central way to do something like that. And Chelsea, I know you guys have more information about things like that on your website. So give us your website one more time.
Sure. So it's chathamemergency.org, and we love having a communications plan. And I always recommend pick the nosiest person in your family because they're likely to know everything.
That is very true.
Good tip.
All right. Well, that concludes our podcast for today. Thank you, Chelsea, for being here. Next week, we're going to be talking to the county manager, Lee Smith, and we're going to talk about some of the changes that have come from COVID-19 for county operations and the things that haven't changed. So join us again next time. Thank you, and we'll see you again on the chat.